Good morning, students. Now, today's lecture is about the part 2 of anticoagulants. In earlier lecture, we have seen part 1 of anticoagulants. So, in that lecture, just to summarize, we have seen the process of hemostasis. What do you understand by hemostasis? The coagulation, what is coagulation? The pathways of coagulation, that is intrinsic, extrinsic pathway, which are converging into common pathway. Multiple factors involved in this coagulation cascade. The drugs acting on these coagulation factors. So these drugs are called anticoagulants, we've seen. Anticoagulants were classified into in vivo and in vitro. So in vivo anticoagulants we were seeing, which are again classified into parenteral and oral anticoagulants. In parenteral, we have seen the most important drugs, that is heparin and low molecular weight heparin. This was about the previous lecture which we have already dealt with. Now in today's lecture, we will go ahead and will study oral anticoagulants and fibrinolytics. Two important group of drugs we are going to study today is, again I'll repeat, oral anticoagulants and fibrinolytics. So the oral anticoagulants important drug or prototype drug we can say in this oral anticoagulant is warfarin. Warfarin is a coumarin derivative, is the most commonly used oral anticoagulant. Warfarin, how does it act? It acts by blocking vitamin K. It is a vitamin K antagonist, we can say. So, by blocking vitamin K, it impairs the synthesis of active vitamin K, by which it decreases the amount of vitamin K dependent coagulation factors. So those coagulation factors, 13 coagulation factors we've seen, are inhibited. Not all the factors, but some of the factors like factor 2, 7, 9 and 10. The synthesis of these 4 factors is inhibited, which is dependent on vitamin K. So again I'll repeat, warfarin is an antagonist of vitamin K, which will inhibit the synthesis of coagulation factors 2, 7, 9 and 10. About its pharmacokinetics, absorption of warfarin is quite rapid. The bioavailability is very high. And similarly, it has got high plasma protein binding capacity and it gets bound to albumin. So depending on this property, that is, it has got high plasma protein binding ability, various drug interactions are there which we will be studying in the further slides. Its T-half is about 36 hours. This is again because of its high plasma protein binding capacity. As the drug is bound to proteins tightly, it takes time for its metabolism or for its clearance, as protein bound drug doesn't get filtrated at the glomerulus and is also not available for the metabolism in liver. Next point is it has got delayed onset of action because it inhibits the synthesis of clotting factors immediately, but clotting factors are already there in the blood. Those already are synthesized inside the blood. They will have its action, and then the termination of action of these already present clotting factors will be there, and then the action of warfarin will be seen, which is inhibition of synthesis of these clotting factors, that is factor 2, 7, 9 and 10. If there is overdosing of this warfarin, then you have to think the mechanism of action. I have already told you that it is an antagonist of vitamin K. So what can be given when there is overdosing? Vitamin K infusion is given to antagonize its effect. Next important point about the pharmacokinetics is it can cross placenta. That's why it is not to be given in pregnant patients, in pregnant ladies. It is not at all given during pregnancies because of this effect, because as it crosses placenta, it will show its effect in the fetus also, which we don't want. And it also shows some effects like malformation of the fetus. These are the side effects of warfarin. Next point is the dose has to be regulated, the individual according to the individuals. So in those individuals, we measure PT, that is prothrombin time. So we have to monitor prothrombin time if the patient is on warfarin. If the prothrombin time is getting raised, is getting prolonged, then you have to reduce the dose of warfarin accordingly. To see about the drug interactions of warfarin, we will concentrate on drug that increases warfarin activity and drugs those decreases warfarin activity. As we have seen that warfarin is tightly bound to plasma protein, that is albumin, there are various drug interactions. So the drugs which are also means other drugs which are also bound to albumin, the examples are aspirin and sulfonamides. So as these drugs are bound to albumin, they tend to displace warfarin, and the free drug, that is free warfarin, is available in the blood for its action. So ultimately there will be increase in the warfarin activity. Drug which inhibits degradation, for example cimetidine, which inhibits its metabolism, ultimately there will be increase in the warfarin concentration and warfarin activity inside the body. Drug those decreases the synthesis of clotting factors. Okay, now we have seen that warfarin is also decreasing the synthesis of clotting factors, that is factor 2, 7, 9, 10. So the drugs, for example antibiotics, that is oral antibiotics, which decreases the synthesis of clotting factors as they hamper the synthesis of vitamin K. So there will be again increase in warfarin activity. Now the drugs which decrease warfarin activity. These are the drugs which induces metabolizing enzyme, that is barbiturates. This induces the metabolism of warfarin in the liver. And the next is obviously vitamin K, which is an antagonist of warfarin. Vitamin K will increase the synthesis of clotting factors, and warfarin is trying to decrease the synthesis of clotting factor. So these will be in the opposite direction. So thus there will be decrease in warfarin activity. Now the side effects of warfarin are ultimately bleeding, which is a very common side effect. So you have to keep an eye on different bleeding sites, and you have to stop or alter the dose of warfarin accordingly. Uses of anticoagulants. So anticoagulants, now I'll be telling the uses of both parenteral anticoagulant and the oral ones. So these are used basically in deep vein thrombosis, which is the most common indication of deep vein anticoagulants. Then pulmonary embolism. Next is myocardial infarction, unstable angina, rheumatoid heart disease, atrial fibrillation, and cerebrovascular disease. The most important I've told you is deep vein thrombosis. The most common site is in the leg and in thigh. There is a clot of blood in the lower leg or in the thigh. So the patients can be bedridden patients, post-operative patients, the patients which have got high viscosity of the blood. The patient's blood can be in hypercoagulable state. So these are ambulatory patients like MI patients. These patients, there is a high tendency of development or generation of this clot in lower leg and or thigh. This approximately happens 1 per 1,000 people. Hospitalization is required for such condition, and the symptoms can be leg pain, edema, altered color over that particular site, altered color of the skin of that particular site, but only 50% of the patient will show the symptom. The rest 50% are asymptomatic. Can lead to a fatal condition, that is pulmonary embolism. Only 80% of the patient die of this pulmonary embolism within first 2 hours if not treated. So this thrombus, that is deep vein thrombus present in the leg, can lead to pulmonary embolism, can also lead to stroke, cerebrovascular accidents. So pulmonary embolism is because of dislodgement of blood clot which is entering the pulmonary circulation. So in such conditions also we give anticoagulants. Next use of anticoagulants we've seen is MI, that is myocardial infarction and unstable angina. Now generally in myocardial infarction there is a arterial thrombus, and in the previous chapter, that is previous lecture, that is antiplatelets, you've seen the use of antiplatelets in such conditions because of the same thing, that is they are arterial thrombus. So thrombus are 2 types, that is arterial and venous. So if it is arterial origin, it is mainly made up of platelets, and if it is a venous origin, then it is mainly made up of fibrin meshwork entangled with the blood cells. So for arterial thrombus, we will go for antiplatelets, and for venous thrombus, we will go for anticoagulants. So MI patients generally have arterial thrombus and antiplatelets are needed. So what is the role of anticoagulants? So these anticoagulants are generally beneficial in preventing neural thrombi at the infarct site. And as these patients are as these patients are bedridden, resting, so till the patient is ambulatory, there are chances of development of venous thrombus in the leg veins. So these can be given for short period till the patient is ambulatory. So heparin IV followed by oral anticoagulants for longer duration, that is 3 to 4 months, is given. Next use is rheumatic heart disease and atrial fibrillation. Here, warfarin, low-dose aspirin or low molecular weight heparin are effective in preventing stroke, that is a further complication of this RHD, that is rheumatic heart disease, and atrial fibrillation. Warfarin is most effective. Now I think you must have understood till now coagulants, anticoagulants, again 2 types of anticoagulants, that is oral ones and parenteral. Now we will shift to another topic, that is fibrinolytics. As the name suggests, these are the drugs which are responsible for lysis of fibrin. Now we'll see what is fibrinolysis. Fibrinolysis is nothing but it's a degradation or breaking down of the clots. It is an activation of endogenous protease. So in this, plasminogen, which is in inactive form, gets converted to plasmin, that is active form. And ultimately, this activated form of plasmin breaks down the fibrin clots. So in coagulants, we've seen that these are generally used as a prophylactic therapy. And these fibrinolytics, these are also called as thrombolytics, as these are responsible for lysis of the clot or thrombus. These are also called as thrombolytics. Okay, so anticoagulants are used as prophylactic treatment and fibrinolytic are used as curative treatment. Now, what are the types of fibrinolytics? There are two types, that is conventional ones and fibrin selective agents. What are the conventional agents? These are streptokinase and urokinase. And the fibrin selective agents are recombinant tissue plasminogen activator. I'll repeat, recombinant tissue plasminogen activator. The short form is TPA. The drugs under this group are alteplase, retiplase and tenecteplase. The first drug is streptokinase. It is a protein synthesized by beta hemolytic group of streptococci, which combine with the proactivator plasminogen. Then this enzymatic complex catalyzes the conversion of inactive plasminogen to active plasmine, which is a mechanism of action of almost all the fibrinolytics or thrombolytics. The main problem with streptokinase is it is antigenic. Now you can think or you can imagine the problems associated with this property of streptokinase, that it is an antigenic drug. That means antibodies are produced inside the body once streptokinase is given. It's a normal human defense mechanism. When the antigen enters, there will be development or there will be generation of antibodies. So these antibodies will be responsible for antigen-antibody reaction. That means ultimately allergic reactions, hypersensitivity reaction, or it can be a fatal anaphylactic reaction. Or else, on the other hand, it can also lead to neutralization of the second dose of streptokinase. Means in the first dose, we are giving streptokinase. As it is antigenic, it will produce antibodies against this particular antigen. And then the next dose, already present antibodies will neutralize this specific antigen, that is streptokinase. So there will be no effect. So these are the problems associated with streptokinase. It is a human enzyme synthesized from cultured human kidney cells that directly converts plasminogen to active plasmin. T-half is very short, that is 10 to 15 minutes. And the advantage over streptokinase is it is non-antigenic. So no production of antibodies, no allergic reactions, or no neutralization of the action in the next dose. Tissue plasminogen activators. They activate plasminogen that is bound to fibrin, which confines fibrinolysis to the formed thrombus and avoids systemic activation. Now, human TPA is manufactured as alteplase by means of recombinant DNA technology. T-half of these agents is about 4 to 8 minutes. That's why they're given by slow IV infusion. These agents also exhibit non-antigenic property. Again, they are very safe to use. So that's why nowadays these agents are preferred over streptokinase. Now retiplase and tenecteplase are better version as compared to streptokinase and urokinase because they act directly and are non-antigenic, and they are more fibrin specific as compared to alteplase. Contraindications of these agents. Now you need to know, before writing any side effect or contraindication, you need to know the actions. Before actions, you need to know mechanism of action and then actions. And then ultimately you will know what are the contraindication. As the action of these drugs we know is it increases the lysis of fibrin and increases the chances of bleeding. So the adverse effect will be bleeding. So the contraindications are Recent thoracic, abdominal or central nervous system surgery. So recently the patient has undergone surgery, so there are chances of increase in the bleeding. Recent cerebrovascular accident, trauma or neoplasm. Again because of the same reason. Bleeding ulcers, hypertension, anticipated invasive procedures, means in those patient will be going in the invasive procedure, that is arterial puncture, biopsies, central lines. In those patients you will avoid giving these thrombolytic or fibrinolytic agents. And patients who are already suffering from hemostatic dysfunction, means already the hemostasis is impaired, in those patients you will avoid giving these agents because again it will increase the chances of bleeding. Indications of these agents are, the first and foremost important is acute myocardial infarction, that is AMI. This is a chief indication of these agents. Fibrinolytics are an alternative first line approach to emergency intervention procedure, which is done with the stent replacement. So when we use fibrinolytics in such situations, recanalization of thrombosed coronary arteries has been achieved in almost 80 to 90% of the cases. The other indications are multiple pulmonary emboli, central deep vein thrombosis, and peripheral vascular disease. Now few slides about the drugs which stop bleeding. Till now we have seen the drugs which increases bleeding, that is anticoagulants and fibrinolytics. Both the drugs are were responsible to increase the bleeding. Now the drugs which are responsible to stop the bleeding. Systemically, the drugs which are used are aminocaproic acid, which are these drugs which are given systemically are also used as, also called as antifibrinolytics. So the drugs are aminocaproic acid and tranexamic acid, and the other drug which is used to stop bleeding is vitamin K, as we have seen in the use of vitamin K in the overdosage of warfarin. And the other local adsorbable drugs are gelatin sponge, gelatin film, oxidized cellulose, microfibrillar collagen and thrombin. And sometimes adrenaline is also used. The soaked gauze of adrenaline is used, and these type of local drugs are called styptics, as I've already told you in the earlier lecture. Fibrinolytic inhibitors, that is the drugs which stop bleeding and are given systemically. These are also called as antifibrinolytics. We've seen fibrinolytics, streptokinase, urokinase. These are responsible for lysis of the clot. Now these are the agents, as we are seeing right now, are antifibrinolytics. This competitively inhibits plasminogen activation. So the tranexamic acid, aminocaproic acid is an analog. Aminocaproic acid is the prototype and tranexamic acid is an analog of aminocaproic acid and has the same properties. That is, it can be administered orally with a loading dose and a uses of these antifibrinolytic therapy. You can guess. These are used to stop bleeding. So these are used as an adjunctive therapy in hemophilia. Bleeding from fibrinolytic therapy means if there is an overdosage of fibrinolytic agents, you can use them as an antagonist or as an antidote. For prophylaxis of rebleeding from intracranial aneurysm. And they are also used for post-surgical gastrointestinal bleeding, post-prostatectomy bleeding, bladder hemorrhage. They are also used for such cases. Adverse effects of these agents will be the opposite of fibrinolytics. That is, there will be increased chances of thrombosis. There will be hypotension, myopathy, abdominal discomfort are another general side effects. So students, here we end up with this particular topic, that is coagulants and anticoagulants, in which we have seen coagulation, different types of anticoagulants, then oral anticoagulants, parenteral anticoagulants. We have also seen fibrinolytics and antifibrinolytics. So please do read the chapter, go through the chapter. Thank you so much.